Back now on Triad Today, and we have a first-time visitor to the program. First time sort of in the community. He's new to the community, but not new to what he does. We're speaking now with Ryan Anderson, a physician assistant with Northern Orthopaedics, part of the Northern Regional Hospital family. Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. By
way of Appalachian State and ECU. What do you do if App and ECU play each other? Who do you pull for?
Oh, man, honestly, I got to go with that.
Okay, my wife would be happy with that. Hey, before we talk about, we're going to talk about orthopedics, but before we do that, let's get a definition here in 10 seconds or whatever. If somebody says orthopedics, what does that cover?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. Mostly everybody will say that orthopedics is basically the bone guys, and I would say that's probably the easiest understanding of it. And we say it's musculoskeletal, so that includes some of the muscles around it as well.
Okay. Now, if I have an orthopedic problem, at what point, do I know that I should just go to my primary doctor versus going to an orthopedic specialist? How do I make that decision?
Yeah, well, the nice thing about it is when it comes down to the relationship between a primary care and an orthopedics is there's a lot of open communication, and not only open communication, but great referral pattern. And so they do see, like, primary care is kind of the foundation of medicine as a whole, and so they do see a lot of orthopedic issues.
And then they can refer me over to you.
Exactly.
But then again, if I'm keeping up on all these things, I said, gosh, I've had this kind of thing before, I can go straight to you, or do I still need a referral from a primary?
You usually can come to us.
Okay. Now, let's talk about emergency type things as opposed to chronic. Say a child is playing outside, falls off a swing set, something like that, and can't walk, is injured one of her feet or something. Clearly, there's an emergency component to that, but in that case, and it's bone related, do I go to an urgent care and see what they say, or do I go right to the emergency room?
Yeah, that's kind of the age-old question, is whether or not you go to emergency room or whether or not you go to urgent care. And I kind of always classified it between, a major or a minor fracture. Your major stuff is going to be the ones that you basically look down at their wrist, and it happens to be kind of deformed, or maybe even the bone sticking through the skin. Those are things that are definitely going to need to be seen in the emergency department.
Yeah, because urgent care is limited in what they can do in that way. I got you. Now, suppose I have a pain, not suppose, I do. I'm looking at the camera. I have these pains. From an old back injury, sports injury, something like that. Are there things that I can do to alleviate the sort of pain from these old chronic sports injuries and breaks and sprains and stuff? What do you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of all, the age-old thing of, what your grandmother used to tell you of rice. A lot of that stuff holds true. So rest, ice, compression, elevation. The only thing I would basically change with that is going to be, rather than ice, I would tell you, after it's going on for a while, switch to heat.
Yeah, ice doesn't do any good after a few days, does it?
Exactly. The other thing is also, your anti-inflammatories. That's kind of their whole category of your ibuprofen, Aleve, Advil, aspirin.
Okay, yeah, all right.
But I will say the big thing about that is you do have to be careful about, just randomly taking those. Those are not things that you just want to willy-nilly take. I would discuss it with your primary care, because if you have issues with maybe your stomach, your
absolutely,
your stomach,
you load up on
kidneys
Motrin
or something like that.
That's right. Hey, before time gets away from us, I'm sort of curious, since you and I met for the first time very quickly. I know you know all about and have specialties in plastic surgery and all that. Why did you go with orthopedics, and what's so special about it?
Firstly, I think that God really lays in a passion or desire in your heart, and then as you kind of go through maturity or experiences, it just further develops that. I myself grew up playing sports. I had orthopedic injuries. God opened a door for an opportunity for me to work with, two wonderful orthopedic surgeons that really developed me into probably the physician that I am right now.
Right.
And with that, the part I love about ortho is, somebody may come in not being able to do the thing that they truly love to do, and if I have the opportunity to take care of that and get them back to what they're doing, life is about living it, not just surviving.
Oh, man, what a great testimony. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're in the area. I'm glad you're here where you can help some of us folks. And thanks for doing the show. Will you come back sometime?
Absolutely.
Up on screen, choosenorthern.org if you want some general information, choosenorthern.org. We are with Ryan Anderson, and he said he's going to come back sometime. And I'm going to hold him to it. We'll be right back after this.